Yet again, we're at this point in which Africans are unable to feed themselves, and the prospects of hunger are really very, very high in Africa. And it will not be surprising if in the next few months, in all parts of Africa, particularly in places like Nigeria, where we've not seen these pictures of malnourished children will be floating around the world. And of course, this will bring back to mind the fact that some years ago in Ethiopia and Somalia, horrific pictures were published of starving children, of birds waiting for children to die so that they'll start eating their carcasses. My name is Romade Shaulu. This is The Other Side. The Reuters news agency, in the report on the screen, says that 35 million Nigerians are at the risk of severe hunger. And this, of course, may be the highest that we've had, perhaps even higher than the time that we had the Nigerian Civil War. And it attributes this to the Islamist attacks that have pushed families to the brink. And of course, it brought in the fact that the World Food Program faces a funding cliff, largely because of the withdrawal of the support that it gets from the United States for feeding countries around the world. Of course, we all do know that violence escalated in 2025 with attacks by insurgents, including Al-Qaeda affiliate Jamaatul Nasr Islam wa Muslimin, JNIM, which carried out its first attack in Nigeria and the Islamic State West African province. This of course, the newspaper also reported, the news agency also reported the fact that ISWAP fighters killed a Brigadier General in the northeast, and armed bandits only last week abducted more than 300 Catholic school children in a mass abduction after they kidnapped 25 schoolgirls in Kebbi who have since been released. If you look at the food-producing belt of Nigeria, places like Plateau State, Benue, Nasarawa, Kogi, Taraba, you will see that a lot of farmers have been unable to go to their farms. In parts of Benue, farmers have to pay some warlords in the bushes to be able to go and harvest their crops. And several farmers have abandoned their farms. And we do know that in some parts of northwestern Nigeria, some communities, 20 local government areas, for instance, in Katsina State, have had to sign peace accords with bandits who are still wielding their guns and moving about freely, even in the presence of security agents, so that they will have the freedom to go to their farms to harvest their crops. And so the hunger trend that we're having in Nigeria, or may have in Nigeria in the coming year, may not be a joking matter. Nigeria may become a laughingstock around the world because of the hunger that will be visited upon Nigeria. And this situation was not helped by the fact that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu permitted the import of rice and maize, and some people say even iron beans recently, and that has meant that the prices of these products have dropped. But this is not the first time we will have this problem of hunger in Africa. Indeed, Africa is the major reason, accounts for 80% of the hunger that we have around the world. And this has been a recurring decima, only increasing now, becoming more serious because of the impact of the devastation in the Sahel by Islamic groups such as the JNIM, which is reportedly about to overthrow the government in Mali and now has a footprint in Nigeria because it recently boasted on its website that it successfully carried an attack in Kwara State where it killed a Nigerian soldier. Now, if you check the statistics, you will see that African leaders have been performing very poorly. They have been unable to feed Africans, and this has been a recurring decima. Between 1972 and 1975, Ethiopia had serious problems of hunger. The main drivers at that time were drought and governance failures. We had in 1973 and 74 Sahel, that is Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Chad, Senegal, Volta, Burkina Faso, where over 100,000 people died. There were livestock losses, and this was attributed to multi-year drought and pastoral collapse. In 1983, 85 again, we had the Ethiopian nationwide crisis where between 400,000 to 1 million people died, and we had drought. It was a result of drought, war, and policy of government counterinsurgency program and this forced resettlement. And then in 1991-92, Somalia again had its own hunger problem, a situation that reportedly between 200 to 300,000 people died, and it was a result of civil war, market collapse, and epidemics. Sudan also had a problem in 1983, and the problem resulted in a military coup that overthrew the government. Then the government just permitted the increase of the price of bread, and the result of that were the street protests that led to the government collapsing. And then in Sudan again, 1998, we had severe localized famine. There was high mortality. It was also a result of war, less displacement, market blockade. The DC Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo, we had excess of 5.4 million deaths. Hunger as a result of war, and the protracted conflict still goes on. We have large-scale displacement, the type that is currently going on in Nigeria, and collapse of the health system. In 2002, Malawi also had its problem, national food crisis, nutrition, cholera outbreaks, and it was thought that weather shocks resulted in that. Of course, in 2005, there was acute malnutrition, acute malnutrition in Niger Republic, and mortality exceeded emergency thresholds. Again, the response was drought, locusts, and high prices. In 2007, 2008, Africa, we had food riots, instability of prices, and so forth. Somalia, again, had its problem, and also result of drought, conflicts, and constraints. Southern Africa had a problem in 2016, 2017, where over 40 million people were said to be had food insecurity. Sudan today, 2017, you have local famine has been declared as a result of conflicts. The Horn of Africa have localized locust upsurge in 2019, 2021 that put 20 million people at risk. And the list goes on and on and on. What are we expecting in the year 2026? Expectation or projection is that 1 in 5 people in Africa will face hunger. And even though hunger is declining globally, but it is rising in Africa. And the result of it is that Africa is going to destroy the picture that the world wants to paint that it has overcome hunger. There will be acute shortage of food in several parts of Africa, including Nigeria. The Horn of Africa will be badly affected, and the Horn of Africa is expected that between 23 to 36 million people might be affected, and this will compound the health problems and other challenges that people are facing in Africa. And now, what are the main drivers of this problem? Again, conflict and denial of conflict. The fact of the matter is that most parts of Africa, governments deny what is obvious. Government have not been transparent. Government have been opaque. The legislatures in Africa, parts of Africa are like lame duck legislatures. As a matter of fact, I do remember that in 2019, I was at a parliamentary conference in Cote d'Ivoire, where one of a parliamentarian stood up and begged that they should talk to the Speaker of the National Assembly, who was present at the meeting, to open the parliament. He said for about a year, the doors of the parliament had not been opened. That means that the parliament had not been sitting for 1 year. So that shows the extent of the weaknesses of the institutions that we have. The result of that is that the corruption and destruction of the misallocation of the little resources that Africa. Of course, so much has been said about the climate drivers, the problem that have been brought about by the climate variability in Africa, the droughts in the Sahel, Horn of Africa, the floods that destroy harvests. And of course, this goes on and on. But the fact of the matter too is that drought that we have in Africa also exist in parts of the Middle East. Dubai, which recently sent food aid to Nigeria and other parts of the world, is actually a desert where there's no water. Israel is actually a desert, but it exports food to other parts of the world, gives food aid to other parts of the world. And that is because of the governance structure, the potentials of Saudi Arabia exporting food and not having problems with food is very high because the government has gone into creating artificial lakes. The government has gone into several projects which have turned several parts of the desert into farmlands that people are farming and they are producing enough food and talking about exporting food from the desert. So we cannot be talking about the desert, we cannot be talking about climate as a reason for lack of food. The climate change that we blame for the problems of food in Nigeria or in Africa does not happen only in Africa. It affects every part of the world. Why is it that other parts of the world, in spite of the climate variability, are able to produce food, and we in Africa were able to produce food? And let's not even talk about the nature of African countries or African being plural. Most parts of the world are plural today. One of the most diverse places on the surface of the earth today is the United States of America. Yet the structure of governance is such that people are living fairly peacefully because there's a government structure that punishes wrong and will not let people who are not supposed to have access to weapons have weapons and go about kidnapping. And then some people within government will be given excuses for them. And of course, with the issue of pests and diseases, locusts, and so forth, in every part of the world. My name is Remande Shawulu. This is The Other Side. What is your view about the food problems in Africa? Are we, are we in Africa really ready to solve our problems, or we're waiting to blame other people and the desert and the environment and the weather for our failures?